I didn't plan to hide in an elevator. I wasn't thinking about escape routes or safety or what floor I needed to reach. All I knew in that moment was that I couldn't stay where I was anymore. The rain had already soaked through my clothes by the time I pushed into the building, my hands shaking so badly I nearly missed the door handle. I remember thinking the lobby was too bright, too open, like there was nowhere to disappear. My shoes slipped against the marble as I crossed the floor. I could hear my breathing, loud and uneven, and underneath it, something worse. Footsteps. Not close enough to see yet, but close enough that my body recognized the sound before my mind did. That's when I saw the elevator. The doors were already closing. I ran. I don't remember deciding to. My body just moved. I reached out and slapped my hand against the metal, harder than I meant to, and for half a second nothing happened. Then the doors slid open again, slow and reluctant, like they were questioning the decision. I stumbled inside. The doors closed behind me, and the sound of the lobby disappeared instantly. The space felt tight. Enclosed. Too quiet. Water dripped from my hair onto the floor, each drop loud in the silence. I leaned back against the wall and closed my eyes for 1 second. Just one. Long enough to breathe. Then I heard him. Not inside the elevator. Outside. Footsteps crossing the lobby. My heart jumped straight into my throat. I reached for the railing beside me and held on like it was the only solid thing left in the world. My fingers were numb, but I didn't let go. I looked at the buttons, all those numbers staring back at me, and pressed one without thinking. I didn't even see which floor it was. The elevator started moving. Up. Relief hit me so hard my knees nearly gave out. I stayed frozen, listening, counting the seconds, waiting for something to go wrong. Nothing did. For a moment, I thought I'd made it. I opened my eyes and caught my reflection in the metal wall. I barely recognized myself. My shirt clung to my skin, darker where the rain had soaked through. My hair was plastered to my face. My eyes looked too big, too alert. The elevator slowed. That didn't make sense. It was too soon. I looked up at the display, expecting to see the number I'd pressed. Instead, it stopped on a floor I didn't recognize. The elevator came to a smooth, deliberate halt. Not a malfunction. Not a glitch. A decision. I remember whispering no under my breath, even though no one was there to hear it. The doors opened. And there he was. He wasn't rushing. He wasn't angry. He wasn't even surprised to see me. He stood just outside the elevator, perfectly still, holding a glass in his hand like this was the most ordinary moment of his night. He was dressed in black. Not flashy. Not loud. Everything about him was controlled. Clean lines. Calm posture. The kind of presence that didn't need to announce itself to be felt. Our eyes met. I don't know how long we stared at each other. A second. Maybe 2. It felt longer. Behind him, further down the hallway, 2 men stood quietly. They didn't speak. They didn't move. They were just there. Watching. I backed up without thinking, my shoulder pressing into the elevator wall. My hand tightened around the railing. I think this elevator stopped on the wrong floor, I said. My voice didn't sound like mine. He looked at the panel beside the doors, then back at me. It stopped exactly where it was supposed to, he said. Something about the way he said it made my stomach twist. I heard raised voices then, drifting up from below. Muffled. Angry. Too familiar. My chest tightened, and I must have reacted because his gaze sharpened, just slightly. What floor were you trying to reach? He asked. I didn't know, I said. I just needed to get away. He nodded once, like that answer confirmed something. This building doesn't work the way you think it does, he said. Not every floor is accessible to everyone. I didn't like the way that sounded. What is this place? I asked. Instead of answering, he stepped aside, giving me space to exit the elevator. Behind me, the doors stayed open, but I knew if I went back down, he would find me. I could feel it in my bones. So I stepped out. The doors closed behind me with a soft sound that felt final. You're safe here, he said quietly. For now. I didn't know why I believed him. But I did. Welcome to Ari Love Beyond. If this is your first time here, I'm glad you found your way. And to my fierce hearts and midnight dreamers, welcome back. Before we go any further, take a moment. Find a quiet place. Dim the lights. If you're listening from somewhere in the world right now, tell me where you are. I love seeing how far our dark romance family reaches. Make sure you're subscribed, tap that like button, and stay with me. Every bit of love you leave here helps us keep unraveling dangerous love stories and high-stakes betrayals together. Now, let me tell you what happened next. The hallway outside the elevator smelled like polished wood and something expensive I couldn't name. Not perfume. Not cologne. Just money. The kind of quiet that doesn't belong to ordinary places. I stood there for a second too long, listening. No shouting. No footsteps chasing me. No raised voice calling my name the way it had downstairs. Just the low hum of the building and the distant sound of rain tapping against tall windows somewhere beyond the walls. My pulse was still racing, but my brain had started working again. That was always the shift. Fear first. Then calculation. The man in black watched me without staring. I noticed that right away. He didn't scan my body or look me up and down. His eyes stayed on my face, steady and unreadable, like he was measuring something internal. I became painfully aware of how I must look. Wet clothes clinging to my skin. Hair sticking to my neck. Hands still trembling no matter how tightly I tried to curl my fingers. "You should dry off," he said. It wasn't a command. It wasn't concern either. Just a statement, delivered the way someone states the time. "I don't think I should stay," I replied. I didn't move. Behind him, one of the men shifted his weight slightly. Not threatening. Just present. A reminder. "You won't be found here," the man in black said. "This floor doesn't exist to most people." That sent a chill through me that had nothing to do with the rain. "What does that mean?" I asked. He didn't answer. Instead, he gestured down the hall. "There's a lounge. Towels. Tea if you want it. You look like you could use both." Every instinct in me screamed not to follow a stranger deeper into an unfamiliar place. Especially not one who spoke like this. Especially not one who seemed completely unconcerned by the danger I was running from. But the elevator was gone. And downstairs, the lobby was still wide open. I took a step forward. The carpet beneath my feet was thick enough to swallow sound. I noticed cameras set discreetly into the corners of the ceiling. Black glass. Clean angles. No blinking lights. Security. Real security. We walked in silence. I counted doors as we passed them, forcing my mind to stay sharp. The hallway curved gently, not long, not short. Designed to disorient without feeling like a maze. The lounge was understated. Low lighting. Leather chairs. A bar along one wall with bottles arranged like they'd been measured with a ruler. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed the city below, blurred by rain and distance. He stopped just inside the doorway. "You can sit," he said. I chose the chair closest to the exit. He noticed. I could tell. He didn't comment. One of the men handed me a towel without a word. I took it, murmured a quiet thank you, and pressed it against my hair. My hands were steadier now. That scared me more than the shaking had. The man in black poured himself another drink. Whiskey, I thought. He didn't offer me any. "Who are you?" I asked. He took a sip before answering. "Someone who controls this floor." That's not an answer. It's the only one that matters right now. I studied him while he drank. He moved with restraint. No wasted motion. Even the way he held the glass felt deliberate. I noticed a faint mark along his neck, disappearing beneath his collar. A tattoo, maybe? Or a scar. "You knew I'd be in that elevator," I said slowly. He didn't deny it. "I knew someone like you would be," he said. "Eventually." That made my stomach tighten. "Someone like me?" I repeated. "Running," he said. Alert. Trying not to look scared. I didn't like how accurate that was. I wrapped the towel tighter around my shoulders. "You stopped the elevator." "Yes." "Why?" "Because you needed a place to land." "And you just, what?" "Collect people who wander into your building." A faint smile touched his mouth. It didn't reach his eyes. "I collect problems," he said. "And solutions." The words hung between us. I thought about the man downstairs. The way his voice had changed when I didn't answer him fast enough. The grip on my wrist earlier that night, tight enough to leave marks, but not enough to draw attention. "I won't stay long," I said. I just need a few minutes. You have as much time as you need, he replied. Until you don't. That sounded like a warning. I stood up abruptly, the chair scraping softly against the floor. I should call someone. You can, he said. But he won't be able to reach you from here. My throat went dry. You don't know who I'm talking about. I don't need to, he said calmly. Men like him behave predictably. That was the first time anger cut through my fear. You don't know anything about him, I snapped. He set his glass down. The sound was soft, but it carried weight. I know he doesn't like losing control, he said. And I know he followed you here. My heart dropped. He's in the building? He was, the man said. Security intercepted him in the lobby. I stared at him. You're saying this like it's nothing. For me, it is. That was when it hit me. This wasn't just an upscale building. This wasn't just a private floor. This was a fortress. Why help me? I asked quietly. He studied me for a long moment. The rain streaked down the windows behind him, distorting the city into something unreal. Because you didn't beg, he said. You didn't collapse. You didn't ask me to save you. I was trying to survive, I said. Exactly. Silence stretched between us again. I became acutely aware of how alone I was in that room. Surrounded by men I didn't know. Protected by a power I didn't understand. I won't cause trouble, I said finally. I'll leave as soon as I can. I know, he replied. That's why this works. He nodded once toward the hallway. There's a bathroom through there. Locking door. You can clean up. I hesitated, then went. Inside, the bathroom was immaculate. Marble counters. Soft lighting. A mirror that showed me exactly as I was. Tired. Wide-eyed. Alive. As I washed my face, I tried to piece things together. The elevator stopping. The way he'd been waiting. The certainty in his voice. This wasn't coincidence. When I stepped back into the lounge, he was on his phone, speaking quietly in a language I didn't understand. Korean, I realized distantly. His tone was low, controlled. Whoever was on the other end responded quickly. He ended the call and looked up at me. He won't be bothering you tonight, he said. What does that mean? It means he'll think twice before following you again. I didn't ask how. I wasn't sure I wanted to know. Why are you really doing this? I asked. He considered the question like it deserved thought. Because, he said slowly, you walked into a place you weren't meant to find. And I'm curious what you'll do next. That unsettled me more than any threat could have. The elevator chimed softly somewhere behind the walls. Rest, he said. When you're ready, I'll decide where you go. I looked at him, at the calm authority in his posture, at the men who never stopped watching the room. I had escaped one danger. And stepped into another. I just didn't know yet which one was worse. I didn't sleep. Not really. The room they put me in looked more like a private suite than anything temporary. Soft lighting. Neutral colors. A bed that looked untouched, like it existed more for appearance than comfort. Everything smelled clean, controlled, intentional. That should have made me feel safe. Instead, it made my skin itch. I lay on my back, staring at the ceiling, listening to the building breathe. Air vents whispered softly. Somewhere far below, an elevator chimed. Each sound felt placed on purpose, like this floor wanted me to know it was alive. I kept replaying the moment the elevator stopped. Not the doors opening. Not his face. The pause before it. That brief, unnatural hesitation. Like someone somewhere had made a choice. I sat up and swung my legs over the side of the bed. The carpet was warm beneath my feet. Too warm. Heated floors, maybe. Another detail that spoke of money, planning, control. I walked to the window. The city looked unreal from up here. Rain streaked the glass, blurring headlights into long glowing lines. People moving through their lives, unaware of what kind of place towered above them. Unaware of him. I didn't hear the door open. I only realized I wasn't alone when I felt it. That subtle pressure in the air. The instinctive awareness you get when someone steps into your space without announcing themselves. You should rest, his voice said from behind me. I turned slowly. He stood near the doorway, hands relaxed at his sides. No jacket now. Just a dark shirt, sleeves rolled slightly at the wrists. He looked less formal like this. More dangerous. I was trying, I said. Your mind won't let you, he replied. Not yet. That wasn't a question. Or a guess. How long have you been standing there? I asked. Long enough. I didn't ask how he'd entered without a sound. Do you make a habit of watching people sleep? I asked instead. One corner of his mouth lifted. Barely. Only when they wander into my territory. There it is, I said. You finally admit this is your territory. He stepped closer, stopping at a careful distance. This entire building is designed to respond to me. The way he said it made my stomach tighten. What does that mean? I asked. It means, he said calmly, that nothing happens here unless I allow it. I thought of the elevator again. The pause. The stop. And the floor. I asked. The one that doesn't exist. He looked at the ceiling, then back at me. This floor isn't listed. It doesn't show up on public directories. The elevators don't stop here unless they're told to. Told by who? By me. The silence that followed felt heavy. You control the elevators, I said slowly. I control more than that. I swallowed. Why show me this? Because you're already asking the right questions, he replied. And because pretending otherwise would insult your intelligence. That surprised me. Most men like him didn't bother with that kind of respect. They mistook fear for stupidity. Confused survival with weakness. He didn't. I crossed my arms, more to steady myself than to appear defiant. So what happens now? Now, he said, you stay. That wasn't part of the plan. You didn't have a plan, he corrected. You had an instinct. It brought you here. And if I want to leave? You can, he said easily. Eventually. That word again. Eventually. Where would I go? I asked. Downstairs? Back into the rain. He studied me, his gaze lingering on my face like he was reading something I couldn't hide. You're afraid of him, he said. Yes, but you're more afraid of needing him, he added. The words landed harder than I expected. You don't know me, I said quietly. I know enough, he replied. You didn't come here looking for rescue. You came looking for time. I didn't answer because he was right. Time to think. Time to breathe. Time to decide what came next. He turned toward the door. Come with me. Where? I asked. You should see how this place works. I hesitated, then followed. The hallway felt different now. Less like a refuge. More like a system. Lights brightened subtly as we passed. Cameras adjusted, tracking movement without being obvious. This floor operates independently, he said as we walked. Separate power. Separate security. Separate rules. And the people downstairs? I asked. They see what they're meant to see. We stopped in front of another elevator. This one didn't have numbers. Just a smooth black panel and a single illuminated line. He pressed his palm against it. The doors opened instantly. Inside, the walls were mirrored. The floor gleamed like polished stone. No buttons. No display. This elevator goes where I tell it to, he said. And right now? I asked. Right now, he said, stepping inside, it's showing you something. I stepped in after him. The doors closed with a soft hiss. The elevator moved. I felt it, even without a display. The subtle shift in pressure. The hum beneath my feet. Look, he said. The mirrors flickered. Then they weren't mirrors anymore. They became screens. I sucked in a sharp breath as the lobby appeared around us. Clear. Detailed. Multiple angles at once. I saw the front doors. The security desk. The rain-soaked marble floor where I'd nearly slipped earlier. And then I saw him. My abuser stood near the desk, his posture tight with frustration. 2 security guards flanked him. Calm. Professional. Unmoved by his anger. He shouldn't be here, the man snapped on the screen. She came in here. I saw her. Sir, one of the guards replied evenly, no one matching that description entered this building. That's a lie. The guard didn't react. I'll need you to lower your voice. I felt my chest tighten. When he left, the man beside me said quietly, he'll remember this place as unwelcoming, unhelpful, closed to him. How? I asked, my voice barely steady. Because that's the narrative I've given him. The elevator continued moving. People believe what they're shown, he continued. Especially when authority supports it. The screens shifted again. Now I saw a different angle. The security office. A monitor showing my abuser being escorted out. He won't come back, the man said. Not here. And me? I asked. That depends. The screens went dark. The mirrors returned. The elevator stopped. The doors opened onto another space. A long corridor lined with doors. Each identical. Each closed. What is this? I asked. Options, he replied. He gestured to one of the doors. It opened silently, revealing a room filled with monitors, files, and people working quietly at desks. Information flowed across screens in multiple languages. This is how control works, he said. Not through force. Through access. I watched people move efficiently, calmly, like they were part of a machine. And you? I asked. What do you do? He met my gaze. I decide who gets protected. And why me? The question slipped out before I could stop it. He was quiet for a long moment. Because you didn't ask to be, he said finally. And because the people who survive without asking often become valuable. That wasn't comforting. That was terrifying. We walked back toward the elevator. Something shifted then. Not in the space. In me. I realized I wasn't just being sheltered. I was being evaluated. Every question. Every reaction. Every pause. You're watching me, I said. Yes. To see what? To see if you understand what's happening. And if I don't? He stepped closer, his voice lowering. Then this floor becomes just another place you pass through. And if I do? I asked. His eyes held mine. Steady. Unblinking. Then you'll stop thinking of me as a threat, he said. And start wondering if I'm the only reason you're still standing. The elevator chimed softly. I felt the ground shift beneath my feet. I didn't realize it yet, but that was the moment everything changed. Because from that point on, I wasn't just hiding anymore. I was being pulled into his world. And I wasn't sure I could walk back out. The elevator stopped without warning. No chime. No gentle slowdown. Just a clean, final halt that made my knees lock. For a split second, I thought it had broken. That the cables had snapped somewhere above me, and this was the pause before gravity finished the job. My hand flew to the rail, fingers tightening around cold metal as my breath caught halfway in. Then the lights shifted. Not off. Not flickering. They dimmed. Purposefully. The glossy walls reflected my face back at me in fragments. Fear sharpened my features, made my eyes look too bright against my skin. My jacket was still damp from the rain, the dark fabric clinging slightly to my arms. The elevator smelled faintly of metal and something expensive. Clean. Controlled. This wasn't a malfunction. This was a decision. I swallowed and listened. No footsteps outside. No voices. Just the soft hum of the building, like it was holding its breath with me. The display above the doors stayed blank. No floor number. No arrow. Nothing to tell me where I was or who had decided I should be here. That was when I felt it again. That presence. The same pressure I'd felt earlier, back when I first ran into this building and the doors had closed behind me a second too fast. The same instinct that had made my skin prickle and my thoughts sharpen. I wasn't alone. The doors slid open. Not fully. Just enough to create a narrow gap, a vertical slice of the world outside. Dim lighting. Dark stone floors. A corridor that felt wider than it needed to be, emptier than it should have been. And at the far end of it, a figure. He didn't move. Didn't rush forward. Didn't step into the light. He stood there like he belonged to the shadow itself. Tall. Broad shoulders outlined by a perfectly cut black suit. No tie this time. The top button of his shirt undone, collar relaxed in a way that felt intentional, not careless. I couldn't see his face clearly yet. Just the shape of him. The stillness. The doors stopped moving. Half open. Half closed. A threshold. My pulse roared in my ears. Every instinct screamed at me to stay inside. To press myself against the back wall, to make myself smaller, invisible. The elevator had been my refuge. My hiding place. A steel box that kept the world and its threats at a distance. But the truth slid in cold and undeniable. This elevator wasn't protecting me anymore. It was delivering me. Come out, he said. His voice was calm. Low. Not loud enough to echo, not soft enough to ignore. I didn't move. I'm not here to hurt you, he added. I almost laughed. Almost. Men always said that right before they did. You already did, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. A pause. Then he stepped forward, just enough for the light to catch him. I saw his face then. Not fully. Not yet. The sharp line of his jaw. The controlled set of his mouth. Eyes dark, unreadable, fixed on me with a focus that made my chest tighten. You ran into my building, he said. You brought danger with you. I didn't mean to, I shot back. I know. That startled me more than anything else. Most people would have accused. Demanded explanations. Raised their voice. He didn't. You could have turned me away, I said. Let security handle it. I did, he replied. And I didn't. My fingers dug into the rail behind me. That doesn't make sense. It does, he said. Just not yet. The elevator remained frozen, doors still half open like the building itself was waiting to see what I would do. Why stop here? I asked. Why not let me leave? Because he was getting closer, he said. My breath caught. You know about him. I know where he is, he corrected. I know where he isn't. And I know where he won't be allowed to go. A chill slid down my spine. You control this place, I said. Yes. The floors. The elevators. Yes. The honesty in his voice made it worse. And you decided to trap me in here with you? He took another step forward. Now I could see him clearly. The faint scar near his eyebrow. The watch on his wrist that probably cost more than my rent for a year. The way he held himself like nothing in this building could surprise him. I decided to give you a choice, he said. I shook my head. This doesn't feel like one. Because you're still thinking like someone who's being chased, he replied. Not someone who's being offered protection. And what do you want in return? I asked. There it was. That question always came eventually. His gaze lingered on me, slow and deliberate, like he was weighing how much truth to give. Nothing, he said finally. Right now. I didn't believe him. Then why me? I pressed. Why not just let me disappear into the night? Because people like you don't disappear, he said. They endure. And that makes them noticeable. The word sat heavy between us. Noticeable. I stepped forward before I could stop myself, crossing the threshold of the elevator. The doors didn't move. They stayed open, like they'd expected it. The floor outside felt solid beneath my shoes. Cold. Real. Behind me, the elevator hummed softly, no longer a shield, but a reminder of how easily the ground could shift under my feet. You've been watching me, I said. Yes. How long? Long enough to know you didn't panic when you should have, he replied. You didn't scream. You didn't beg. You assessed. That's not a compliment, I said. It is where I come from. I glanced down the corridor. Is this where you decide things? Who gets saved? Who gets left behind? He followed my gaze. This is where I decide who gets access. And me? You're standing at the edge of it. A quiet tension wrapped around us. Not violent. Not loud. Controlled. I thought of the rain outside. The way my abuser's footsteps had echoed behind me. The certainty in his voice when he'd said he knew where I lived. Then I looked back at the man in front of me. At the way the building responded to his presence. At the elevator frozen behind me, waiting for instruction. What happens if I say no? I asked. Then the doors close, he said simply. And you go back down. And if I say yes? He didn't answer right away. That was the most honest thing he'd done so far. You step into a world that doesn't pretend to be kind, he said finally. But it keeps its promises. My heart pounded. And him? I asked. A flicker crossed his expression. Something sharp. Dangerous. He stops being your problem, he said. The corridor lights brightened slightly. Just a fraction. A signal. The building was listening. I realized then that this wasn't about rescue. It was about alignment. About whether I would remain someone running through other people's spaces, or step into one where the rules were written by someone far more dangerous than the man chasing me. I looked back at the elevator one last time. The place I'd hidden. The place that had kept me alive. Then I looked at him. And understood, with a clarity that scared me more than anything else, that whatever choice I made here would follow me long after the doors closed. I need time, I said. He inclined his head slightly. You have very little of it. The lights dimmed again. The elevator behind me chimed softly, and the doors began to move. The doors closed behind me with a sound that felt final. Not loud, not dramatic. Just a soft, airtight seal that told me there would be no interruptions now. The corridor changed as we walked. At first, it had been quiet luxury. Stone floors, clean lines, minimal lighting. But the deeper we moved, the more intentional everything became. The walls weren't just walls anymore. They held embedded panels, faint seams that hinted at hidden screens, hidden doors, hidden eyes. This floor wasn't just protected. It was designed. I noticed how the lights adjusted as he passed. Not switching on or off, but subtly brightening, as if responding to his presence rather than his movement. Like the building recognized him. Does it ever feel strange, I asked, to walk through a place that listens to you? He didn't slow. It would feel strange if it didn't. That answer settled heavy in my chest. We stopped in front of a set of doors taller than the others. Matte black. No handle. No markings. He raised his hand. Not to touch the door, but to pause. This is where people usually start asking the wrong questions, he said. And what are the right ones? I asked. Whether they want to know the truth, he replied, or just enough to feel comfortable. The doors slid open. The room beyond took my breath away. It was vast. Not in the way ballrooms are vast, meant to impress with empty space, but in a way that felt purposeful. Functional. Screens lined one entire wall, each displaying a different part of the building, the city, or information I couldn't begin to understand. Tables held neatly arranged files. Digital, physical, everything layered like redundancy was a religion here. At the center of it all stood a long table made of dark glass. And behind it, a chair that faced the room like a throne without decoration. This, he said, stepping aside, is the floor. Not a control room. Not an office. The floor. I took a step in, then another, my footsteps sounding too loud in the quiet. People were present, but distant. They worked without looking up, without acknowledging me, like my existence here had already been accounted for. You brought me here to show me this, I said. Why? Because you already know, he replied. I'm simply removing the doubt. I turned to him. About what? He walked past me, around the table, and stopped behind the chair. Then he sat. It wasn't dramatic. No slow movement. No deliberate pose. But the moment he settled into that seat, the room shifted. I felt it. Like gravity had subtly realigned itself. Every screen behind him adjusted. Some went dark. Others sharpened. The ambient hum of the room softened, as if everything else had learned to wait. This floor exists outside the law, he said calmly. Outside standard jurisdiction. What happens here is documented, tracked, and decided before anyone else knows it's happening. You're talking about power, I said. I'm talking about responsibility, he corrected. I crossed my arms, grounding myself. People with power always say that. And people without it, he replied, are usually the ones who suffer when it's misused. I didn't like how easily he saw through me. What do you want from me? I asked again. This time, he didn't deflect. I want you to understand the position you're in, he said. Not as a victim. As a variable. That's not reassuring. It's honest. He tapped the table lightly. A screen shifted, angling itself toward me. It showed the building entrance. Then the street outside. Then a familiar face. My abuser. My breath caught. He's persistent, the man said. But predictable. The screen split into multiple views. Different locations. Different times. Patterns emerging in a way that made my stomach twist. You've been tracking him, I said. Yes. For how long? Longer than you think. I turned back to him sharply. So this isn't just about me running into your building. No, he said. It's about you colliding with something that was already in motion. The room felt suddenly smaller. You knew who he was before tonight, I said. I knew what he was, he replied. And I knew what he would eventually do. I clenched my fists. Then why didn't you stop him earlier? A pause. The first real one. Because intervention has consequences, he said. And timing matters. That's not an answer, I snapped. It's the only one you're going to get. Anger flared, sharp and unexpected. You let people suffer until it's convenient for you? His gaze hardened.
I let systems reveal themselves.
That's cruel. So is chaos, he said. I choose the lesser of two evils.
The screen changed again.
This time, it showed me security footage from earlier that night. Me running, slipping, looking back over my shoulder. Seeing myself like that made my chest ache. You see, he said quietly. You survived long enough to reach a point of leverage. I didn't choose that, I whispered. No, he agreed. But now you're standing in it. I turned away, needing distance, space, air. I walked toward the wall of screens, studying them without really seeing. You're safe here, he said. Physically. And mentally? I asked. That, he said, depends on you. I laughed softly. A brittle sound. You really think you can control everything? No, he replied. Just the things that matter. I faced him again. And I matter? His eyes held mine. Right now, yes. That terrified me more than if he'd said no. Why? I asked. He stood from the chair. The movement was smooth, unhurried. But it carried weight. The kind that made people step aside without being told. Because you remind me of something, he said. My heart stuttered. Of what? Of a decision I made once, he replied. And the cost that followed. For the first time, something cracked his composure. Not weakness. Memory. I waited. He didn't elaborate. Instead, he gestured toward a smaller door at the far end of the room. That room contains everything we know about the man who's been following you. And if I go in there? I asked. You'll never be able to pretend ignorance again. And if I don't? Then you leave, he said. And tonight ends the way it was always going to. I thought of the rain, the street, the certainty in my abuser's voice. And you? I asked. What happens to you if I walk away? A faint smile touched his lips. Nothing. I didn't believe that either. I took a slow breath. This was the moment. Not when I ran. Not when I hid. Not even when the elevator stopped. This. Standing in a room that controlled more than just floors and doors. Facing a man who could erase threats or become one himself. You're not asking me to trust you, I said. No, he agreed. I'm asking you to decide. I looked at the door. Then back at him. The screens hummed softly behind us, waiting. And I realized the truth, sharp and undeniable. I was safe. But safety wasn't the same as freedom. And whatever I chose next would define which one I'd be fighting for. I didn't go into the room right away. I stood there, just outside the threshold, my hand hovering inches from the doorframe. The air felt different here. Thicker. Charged. Like the building itself was waiting to see which version of me would step forward. Behind me, I felt him. Not his breath. Not his footsteps. His attention. It rested on my back with the same weight as a hand, steady and deliberate, never forcing, never retreating. That was the worst part. He didn't rush me. Didn't crowd me. He let silence do the work. I hated how effective that was. If I open that door, I said quietly, there's no going back. No, he agreed. There isn't. I turned to face him. Up close, the details became harder to ignore. The faint lines near his eyes that suggested he noticed everything. The way his suit fit him like it had been tailored for this exact posture. Still. Controlled. Ready. And if I don't? I asked. You walk out, he said. And you live with the questions. I exhaled slowly. You say that like it's a kindness. It can be, he replied. For some people. I searched his face, trying to find something familiar. Something human. A crack I could understand. What are you really offering me? I asked. He took a step closer. Not enough to invade my space. Just enough that I felt the shift. I'm offering you distance from fear, he said. Not its absence. Distance. That's not the same thing. No, he said softly. But it's realistic. Something about the way he said it made my chest tighten. Not fear. Recognition. I thought of all the nights I'd told myself I was fine. That I could handle it. That staying alert was the same as being safe. I'd been wrong. Why does this feel like a test? I asked. Because it is. Of what? Of whether you choose to react, he said, or decide. The words settled into me slowly. I looked back at the door. Then I stepped through. The room was smaller than I expected. Intimate. No windows. Just a table, a single chair, and a wall-sized screen that flickered to life the moment I entered. The door slid shut behind me with a soft click. I flinched. He noticed. "I won't lock it," he said calmly. "You can leave whenever you want." "That's easy to say when you control the building," I replied. A faint smile. Gone as quickly as it appeared. The screen shifted, displaying information in clean, organized lines. Names. Dates. Patterns. Pieces of a life I recognized too well. My life. My throat tightened. "You said this was about him." "It is," he said. "But context matters." The screen showed footage I didn't remember ever being recorded. Me walking to work. Me checking my phone. Me laughing once, briefly, like I'd forgotten to be careful. "You've been watching me," I said. "Observing," he corrected. "For how long?" "Long enough to know you don't break easily." That wasn't comforting. "That makes me useful to you," I said. "Yes." I turned to him sharply. "At least you're honest." "I don't believe in lying when the truth is already dangerous," he replied. I looked back at the screen. The footage shifted again. This time, it showed him. The man who had followed me. Not just tonight. Before. Other places. Other days. My stomach turned. "You let this go on," I whispered. "I allowed it to reach a point where intervention would be final," he said. "Clean." "And what if it hadn't?" I asked. "What if I'd been hurt?" His jaw tightened. The first visible sign of restraint I'd seen. "Then this conversation would be very different," he said. The implication sat heavy between us. I hugged my arms around myself, suddenly aware of how exposed I felt. Not physically. Seen. "You could erase him," I said. "Just like that." "Yes." "And you haven't," I said. "Not yet." I turned to face him fully. "Because of me." "Because of what you choose," he corrected. Anger flared. "You're asking me to decide the fate of someone who terrorized me." "I'm asking you," he said carefully, "to decide how much power you want over what comes next." "That's not fair." "No," he agreed. "But it's honest." The silence stretched. My heart beat loud in my ears. "You're afraid," he said quietly. "Yes." "But not of him anymore," he added. I didn't answer. He took another step closer. I felt it then. The subtle shift in the air. The awareness of proximity. Not threatening. Intense. "You're afraid of what happens if you stop running," he said. I swallowed. "What happens?" I asked. "You start choosing," he replied. "And choices have consequences." I laughed softly, shaking my head. "You make it sound like this is some kind of invitation." "In a way," he said, "it is." "To what?" "To alignment," he said. "With me. Or away from me." The words sent a ripple through me. "And if I align with you?" I asked. "You stay safe," he said. "And you see the world the way it really is." "And the cost." He didn't hesitate. "You won't be able to unsee it." I stepped back, needing space, but my heel caught slightly on the edge of the carpet. I stumbled. Before I could fall, his hand closed around my wrist. Warm. Firm. Steady. The contact sent a jolt through me. Not fear. Awareness. He didn't pull me closer. Didn't hold on longer than necessary. But he didn't let go immediately either. "Careful," he said softly. Our eyes met. For a split second, something unspoken passed between us. Recognition. Curiosity. A tension that had nothing to do with danger and everything to do with proximity. Then he released me. "I'm not here to own you," he said quietly. "Or control you." "Then what are you here for?" I asked. "To see whether you're willing to stand beside power," he replied. "Instead of under it." My breath caught. That was worse than any threat. I walked to the screen again, studying the information without really seeing it. "If I say yes," I said, "I become part of your world." "Yes." "And if I say no?" "You leave," he said. "And I make sure he never comes near you again." I turned sharply. "You'd do that anyway." "Yes," he admitted. "But you wouldn't know how. Or why. Or what it cost." "That sounds like a warning." "It is," he said. "And an invitation." I closed my eyes. I thought of the elevator. The rain. The pause before the doors opened. I thought of how small I'd felt running through spaces that didn't belong to me. And how different it felt standing here now. Afraid, yes, but upright. When did you stop believing in simple rescues? I asked. He was quiet for a long moment. When I learned they don't exist, he said. I opened my eyes. The screen dimmed slightly, as if responding to my heartbeat. What happens next? I asked. That depends on what you choose to ask me, he replied. I met his gaze, my pulse steadying despite the tension. Then tell me, I said, what you want from me in the long run. His expression didn't change, but something in his eyes sharpened. That, he said slowly, is the one question that can't be answered yet. The room seemed to hold its breath. And I understood, with a clarity that sent a shiver through me, that whatever I decided next wouldn't just determine what happened to him. It would determine who I became after the doors opened again. And for the first time since the night began, I wasn't sure which outcome scared me more. Morning didn't arrive here the way it did everywhere else. There was no sunrise creeping through curtains. No gradual softening of shadows. Just a subtle shift in the light panels along the walls, warming by a fraction, like the building had decided it was time to move forward. I noticed, because I was already awake. I stood by the window of the suite they'd given me, watching the city far below begin to stir. Traffic thickened. Lights switched off one by one. Life resumed its usual rhythm, unaware of how close it had come to colliding with something far more dangerous than routine. I was safe. That fact settled into me slowly, like a foreign language my body was still learning to trust. A soft knock sounded behind me. Not urgent. Not hesitant. Intentional. You can come in, I said. The door opened, and he stepped inside. No suit this time. Just a dark shirt, sleeves rolled up, watch still on his wrist. He looked less like a figure carved from shadow and more like a man who had already won the night and was now deciding what to do with the morning. It's over, he said. I turned to face him. For him. Yes. The word was final. Clean. No room for interpretation. What does that mean? I asked. It means, he said calmly, he will never be close enough to matter again. I studied his face, searching for something. Satisfaction. Anger. Anything that would tell me what it had cost him to make that true. I found none. And me? I asked. You'll leave when you're ready, he replied. The building will forget you were ever here. That easy? I asked. For you, he said. Yes. Relief washed through me, sudden and almost overwhelming. My knees weakened, and I sat down on the edge of the bed before I realized I needed to. Safe. The word felt fragile in my mouth. You don't look relieved, he observed. I don't know how to yet, I admitted. He nodded, like that answer made perfect sense. Fear doesn't disappear just because the threat does, he said. It just loses its voice. I glanced up at him. You sound like you've had practice. A pause. Too much, he replied. Silence settled between us, not awkward, not heavy. Just real. I broke it. What happens now? For you. He considered me for a moment. The floor continues to function. The city keeps moving. Other problems present themselves. And I'm not one of them, I said. No, he said. You were never a problem. Something about that tightened my chest. I stood, crossing the room until I was a few feet from him. You never told me your name. No, he agreed. Will you? He looked at me, really looked, like he was measuring the weight of that question. Names create attachments, he said. Attachments create expectations. And expectations create leverage, I finished. A faint smile touched his lips. You learn quickly. Then don't give me leverage, I said. Just give me a name. Another pause. You can call me Jean, he said finally. It's not the one on my documents. But it's real, I said. Yes. I nodded, accepting it for what it was. A partial truth. A controlled reveal. I won't ask for more, I said. I know, he replied. We walked together toward the door. The building responded as it always did, lights adjusting, systems aligning. But I noticed something different now. It wasn't just responding to him. It was responding to my presence too. The elevator doors opened smoothly, revealing the familiar interior. The same steel walls. The same polished rail. But it no longer felt like a hiding place. It felt like a threshold. This elevator will take you straight to the lobby, he said. No stops. And after that? I asked. You go back to your life, he said. Changed, whether you want it to be or not. I stepped inside, then turned back to face him. You never answered the question, I said. Which one? What you wanted from me in the long run. He met my gaze evenly. Understanding. And now? I asked. Now I have it, he said. The doors began to close. Wait, I said. They stopped instantly. I took a breath. If our paths cross again, will it be because I chose it? He held my eyes, something unreadable passing through them. Yes, he said. Or because the world decided it needed you to. The doors slid shut. The elevator descended smoothly, silently. No hesitation this time. No pause between floors. When the doors opened, the lobby looked exactly as it always had. Polished stone. Soft lighting. A security desk that barely acknowledged me as I walked past. Outside, the rain had stopped. The air felt clean. New. I stepped onto the sidewalk, the city wrapping around me like it always had. Ordinary. Loud. Alive. I should have felt normal again. I didn't. As I walked away from the building, I realized something had shifted. Not outside me. Inside. Fear no longer led my steps. It walked beside me now, quieter, observant. No longer in control. I didn't know if I'd ever see him again. If the floor would ever open for me the way it had tonight. But I knew this much. I had stood in a place where power lived openly. I had been seen by it. And I had walked away on my own terms. That knowledge settled into me like a quiet flame. Somewhere high above, unseen cameras went dark. Elevators resumed their ordinary routes. A hidden floor returned to silence. But the city had changed for me. And as I disappeared into the crowd, one thought stayed with me, sharp and undeniable. Safety wasn't just about escaping danger. Sometimes it was about knowing exactly who held the doors open. And choosing when to walk through them again. If this story stayed with you longer than you expected, if the silence felt louder than the words, if the pauses carried weight, if the choices she faced kept replaying in your mind even after the scene ended, then you didn't just listen to a story. You stepped inside it. Some stories don't end when the narration stops. They linger. They sit quietly with you. They ask questions without demanding answers. They make you wonder what you would have done if the doors had closed behind you, if the elevator had stopped on the wrong floor, if safety came with a cost you hadn't prepared for. This is Ari Love Beyond, a place for dangerous love stories, quiet power, and moments where one decision changes everything. Where control isn't always loud, where fear isn't always visible, and where the most important choices are the ones made in silence. I'd love to know what stayed with you the most. Was it the tension? The restraint? The moment she stopped running? Tell me in the comments what you would have done in her place. Would you have walked away when the doors opened, or stepped deeper inside, knowing you might never see the world the same way again? Until the next story, take a breath. Stay safe. Stay curious. And remember, some doors don't close to trap you. They close to see whether you're ready to choose. Anger flared. You're asking me to decide the fate of someone who terrorized me. I'm asking you, he said carefully, to decide how much power you want over what comes next. That's not fair. No, he agreed. But it's honest. The silence stretched. My heart beat loud in my ears. You're afraid, he said quietly. Yes. But not of him anymore, he added. I didn't answer. He took another step closer. I felt it then. The subtle shift in the air. The awareness of proximity. Not threatening. Intense. You're afraid of what happens if you stop running, he said. I swallowed. What happens? I asked. You start choosing, he replied. And choices have consequences. I laughed softly, shaking my head. You make it sound like this is some kind of invitation. In a way, he said, it is. To what? To alignment, he said. With me. Or away from me. The words sent a ripple through me. And if I align with you? I asked. You stay safe, he said. And you see the world the way it really is. And the cost. He didn't hesitate. You won't be able to unsee it. I stepped back, needing space, but my heel caught slightly on the edge of the carpet. I stumbled. Before I could fall, His hand closed around my wrist. Warm, firm, steady. The contact sent a jolt through me. Not fear. Awareness. He didn't pull me closer. Didn't hold on longer than necessary. But he didn't let go immediately either. Careful, he said softly. Our eyes met.
For a split second, something unspoken passed between us.
Recognition. Curiosity.
A tension that had nothing to do with danger and everything to do with proximity.
Then he released me. I'm not here to own you, he said quietly. Or control you. Then what are you here for? I asked.
To see whether you're willing to stand beside power, he replied.
Instead of under it. My breath caught.
That was worse than any threat. I walked to the screen again, studying the information without really seeing it.
Anger flared.
You're asking me to decide the fate of someone who terrorized me.
I'm asking you, he said carefully, to decide how much power you want over what comes next. That's not fair. No, he agreed. But it's honest.
The silence stretched.
My heart beat loud in my ears.
You're afraid,
he said quietly.
Yes.
But not of him anymore, he added. I didn't answer. He took another step closer. I felt it then. The subtle shift in the air.
The awareness of proximity.
Not threatening.
Intense.
You're afraid of what happens if you stop running, he said. I swallowed. What happens? I asked. You start choosing, he replied.
And choices have consequences.
I laughed softly, shaking my head. You make it sound like this is some kind of invitation.
In a way, he said, it is.
To what?
To alignment, he said.
With me.
Or away from me.
The words sent a ripple through me. And if I align with you? I asked. You stay safe, he said. And you see the world the way it really is. And the cost. He didn't hesitate. You won't be able to unsee it. I stepped back, needing space, but my heel caught slightly on the edge of the carpet. I stumbled. Before I could fall, his hand closed around my wrist. Warm, firm, steady. The contact sent a jolt through me. Not fear. Awareness. He didn't pull me closer. Didn't hold on longer than necessary. But he didn't let go immediately either. Careful, he said softly. Our eyes met.
For a split second, something unspoken passed between us.
Recognition. Curiosity.
A tension that had nothing to do with danger and everything to do with proximity.
Then he released me. I'm not here to own you, he said quietly. Or control you. Then what are you here for? I asked.
To see whether you're willing to stand beside power, he replied.
Instead of under it. My breath caught.
That was worse than any threat. I walked to the screen again, studying the information without really seeing it.
If this story stayed with you longer than you expected.
If the silence felt louder than the words, if the pauses carried weight, if the choices she faced kept replaying in your mind even after the scene ended, then you didn't just listen to a story.
You stepped inside it. Some stories don't end when the narration stops. They linger. They sit quietly with you. They ask questions without demanding answers. They make you wonder what you would have done if the doors had closed behind you, if the elevator had stopped on the wrong floor, if safety came with a cost you hadn't prepared for. This is Ari Love Beyond, a place for dangerous love stories, quiet power, and moments where one decision changes everything. Where control isn't always loud, where fear isn't always visible, and where the most important choices are the ones made in silence. I'd love to know what stayed with you the most. Was it the tension? The restraint? The moment she stopped running? Tell me in the comments what you would have done in her place. Would you have walked away when the doors opened, or stepped deeper inside, knowing you might never see the world the same way again? Until the next story, take a breath. Stay safe. Stay curious. And remember, some doors don't close to trap you. They close to see whether you're ready to choose. If this story stayed with you longer than you expected,
if the silence felt louder than the words, if the pauses carried weight, if the choices she faced kept replaying in your mind even after the scene ended, then you didn't just listen to a story.
You stepped inside it. Some stories don't end when the narration stops. They linger. They sit quietly with you. They ask questions without demanding answers. They make you wonder what you would have done if the doors had closed behind you, if the elevator had stopped on the wrong floor, if safety came with a cost you hadn't prepared for. This is Ari Love Beyond, a place for dangerous love stories, quiet power, and moments where one decision changes everything. Where control isn't always loud, where fear isn't always visible, and where the most important choices are the ones made in silence. I'd love to know what stayed with you the most. Was it the tension? The restraint? The moment she stopped running? Tell me in the comments what you would have done in her place. Would you have walked away when the doors opened, or stepped deeper inside, knowing you might never see the world the same way again? Until the next story, take a breath. Stay safe. Stay curious. And remember, some doors don't close to trap you. They close to see whether you're ready to choose.